Martyr Marys and foot-washing fellas. Grow out your luscious locks, put on your sluttiest crown of thorns, and I would have made cake my body, but it has too many calories.
My sons, it is time to talk Tull to me.
Welcome back, I am Omen Doubting Thomas Sade.
And I am St. Nicholas McGill.
Together we are the Feckless Moans.
And this, my little Jesus discs, is Talk Tull to Me.
The gentlest of crucifixions on the barren hill outside the city of Progrock, in which Nuncio Nick and Oil Jar Omen will attempt to prove the innocence of each and every track that red-hot rectory rock band Jethro Tull have ever preached to the birds. We will gain the grace of Andy Giddings' G-chord, defile the detractors to the divine David Pegg, and drench ourselves in the baptismal font of our Byzantine brother Martin Barr. And if we can make matching miters, probe the mysteries of transubstantiation, and sip a little vinegar from a sponge, perhaps we will one day gain the absolution of the narthex of the nocturne, the Scotsman of the stigmata, the flutist for the fall of man, the liturgist of Leiden Schlaflich, Ian, you're not my real dad, Anderson.
Good word, narthex. What a great word in the mouth, narthex.
What is that? Is that part of the...
It's part of the rectory, I believe. Yep, you're welcome.
Yep. It's the special part of the rectory.
I actually, in my brief stint of narrating audiobooks, I narrated a kid's book called The Blue Moon Narthex, a young adult book.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Go check that out and don't listen to it. Please.
Speaking of narthexes, Nick.
Nartheses would be the plural.
Thank you. What is the delightful occasion which brings us together on this fine spring day?
That was actually the sound from Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Have you ever seen that? Probably
No,
not.
I haven't.
Okay. 3 people out there are laughing their asses off.
Nice.
We are listening to and talking about the final track off of the album proper, the final of the bonus tracks, quote unquote, even though we do have one more.
Right.
We are talking track number 13. Ooh, lucky 13. When Jesus Came to Play. Jesus and his disciples.
Yep, makes 13.
13. There it is.
So, and to be clear, this is the last bonus track that was released in 1991 with the release of the album. We have an additional bonus track which was released in 2006 as a remaster.
Yes.
Which we'll talk about next week.
Next week, you twink.
Oh, it's been a long time since I could be considered a twink, Nick, but I appreciate the thought.
I'm nothing if not a flatterer.
Let's have a listen to When Jesus Came to Play.
Pray on.
Nick McGill.
Omen, is it really you?
You'll never know.
I'll never know.
Because you didn't stay for the whole show.
That's right. I left, and honestly, it was worth it.
Yeah, I agree. That was When Jesus Came to Play.
That it was.
Does this song do it for ye?
It doesn't do much for me. It's fun, but it's definitely not one that I'm like, oh yeah, this one's on. There are so many others that really my attention will snap on when it's time, but this is not one of them. It's not bad. I'm not saying it's bad.
You would never.
I wouldn't dare.
We talked last week about how we both feel that When Jesus Came to Play is almost like the part 2 of Gold Tip Boots, Black Jacket, and Tie.
Yeah.
And I was really sensing that. I was like, oh, it's weird not hearing it with that other song. Because Gold Tip Boots, Black Jacket, and Tie sets you up so well with its fast-paced to then ease into the slower-paced song. Listening to the slower-paced song by itself, I had the impression that it was like, oh, wow, this is slower than I remembered.
Yeah, it's a bit of a trudger, particularly because it's 5 minutes long. That does not help.
There's also something about the construction of it, which is, there's a lot of fantastic construction going on, but because it has that, it's playing with that, the whole album is playing with those American sounds, as it were.
Right.
The beginning, the first couple of verses, starts to set up the sonic images. You have the mandolin starting off.
Mando's at about 30 seconds, I think.
Mandolin starts right at the top.
Oh, is that right? Is that the Mando right there? I guess so. I thought that was acoustic.
It might be both. It might be it might be a combination. And then we do have a little bit of that chunky chunk on the electric guitar.
Yep.
And as it goes, we start to layer in some cool stuff. Ian's singing in that intro is really gorgeous, really pretty.
The first bit we hear with his voice is the granny. Is the goat. The granny goat. Nanny goat.
Granny nanny.
The nanny granny. Yeah, so we get that, but then it does smooth out, and he's in very fine full voice in this song.
He hits some great falsettos in that early section. There's some very fun stuff in the first couple of verses where the band is illustrating the lyrics to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Like the cork from Fizzy Wine. Martin goes, like the don't, gives that energy to that image.
Like the cork from Fizzy Wine.
Martin is accent like all the way through this. For the most part, I think it might just be the second half. That's when I first really noticed it. It might be the whole thing, but it's a lot of kind of call and response between Ian and him.
Yes.
There's still electric going on in the background, but it's Ian singing, and then we get these really distinctive stings and chunks and chuggas from Martin in between those sets of lyrics.
Sometimes just a single note.
Yeah, just wow, now.
As we go on, he set that bandstand jumping. We have the drums.
Ooh, yep. It's about 110. It's real good.
And then even in that same line, and he cranked it up so loud, the band drops in again.
You said that bandstand jumping. Yeah, he cranked it up so loud.
There are all these changes that happen in that first couple of verses that help to illustrate the point. Once we get past the breakdown, and I've got no 12 disciples, the music doesn't really evolve much.
Yeah.
We have the wonderful breakdown, and we have another kind of flute breakdown at the end. We have some little interesting details, but those verses don't progress musically as much as the first ones do. And to a certain extent, that's appropriate to the content, because it's kind of talking about an underwhelming, hyped up, underwhelming performance. But I do think that contributes to the song feeling like slower and longer.
Yeah. You're accustomed to that. I'm adding something new. This is a buildup. We're moving into this. We're moving into this. And then it's like, okay, we've plateaued. Okay.
Yeah, a bit unusual. Now, that's not to say there's not stuff of interest. I mean, even just the lead into the breakdown is really fantastic.
And Ian's flute, particularly from that breakdown and on, is very good. It's very meaty. It's very breathy. He goes ham, like original, very early on Ian Anderson that we've heard. It's been a while since we heard him go this hardcore with it.
And now he has the technique.
Exactly.
So it really is very special. I'm a big fan of the key shift at about 210. And the way that Ian transitions it with his voice. When Jesus came to play. When Jesus came to play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When Jesus came to play.
I didn't even catch that. That's like one of the few musical things I can catch. And I did not catch that was a key change. I'm ashamed.
And maybe it's just a difference of the chord progression, but it's in the same key. But it's used to great effect. It's nice. It signals the breakdown, and the breakdown is lovely.
It's not a step up. I think that's why it wasn't so, because that's one of the most common key changes is let's go up now.
That's a very pop music and musical theater way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
There's a roughness to the music overall in this song.
You think so?
Not rough in terms of it being not well played or it being disjointed, but there's like you hear the twanging of the strings.
Okay. It's not hermetically sealed.
Yeah, it's rustic. It's American.
Those Americans and their music. That's my American accent. How was that? Was that good?
I was very believable.
Yeah, okay.
It's making me move my hips.
I don't like it. I need to pray to Jesus.
I need an ice water cigarette.
Just dip it in there.
Yeah.
Bloop, bloop. Yeah.
So cold. There's a nice moment, another detail around 4:15 as we're starting to wrap the song up.
Mm-hmm.
Where we get two drawn out chords that I wrote that they seemed like a hint of liturgicalness.
Liturgy.
They were a little liturgistic.
Liturist.
When Jesus came to play. When Jesus came to play.
I mean, it doesn't really sound like church music, but it pulls back just for a moment and gives you a little space for contemplation.
It's got more of a classical feel, certainly. Yeah. Yeah. The electric is a lot more subdued there.
Yeah, it gives you a moment it gives just enough of a break in style or a variation of style.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which I think is fairly similar to when he does that key change. I think it's relatively close to the same thing that they do in terms of like slowing down a little bit, changing the tune just a little bit there. Yeah.
Some really lovely blending of the flute grunting track and the singing track. They almost they kind of weave in and out of each other, and it's almost hard to distinguish which is which as the music is fading out. Really fun.
It's a very verbose song. A lot of lyrics here. It's the long sentences, and scansion is pretty cool, is pretty okay. The one that really stuck out to me is, I guess you weren't there. He's got the two syllables in weren't.
If you thought they had me crucified, I guess you weren't there. Oh yeah.
Is there a way to say that word with a different number of syllables?
Weren't. The American way.
I always say weren't.
One syllable. Yeah, but you also say often and nuclear.
Well, yeah, weren't.
Weren't.
Ah, interesting.
You weren't.
Yeah, just if we look at silent singing, we can see, for instance, gold tip boots, black jacket, and tie, and when Jesus came to play side by side.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see the literal lines are longer for when Jesus came to play.
Nearly twice as long for each line, yeah.
And he breaks them up singing wise.
Oh, yes.
So I was in my watering hole with some ugly friends of mine. Yippity-tippity-tippity-tee. When the door came off its hinges. Zippity-tippity-tiddly-dee.
I was in my watering hole with some ugly friends of mine. When the door came off its hinges.
That is also why it feels so long.
Yes.
He never finishes a thought in one go.
I think when we get into what we could call the chorus, he said, "My name is Jesus, gonna turn your head around. I'm gonna make this easy, got no time to mess around."
You said my name is Jesus, gonna turn your head around. I'm gonna make this easy, got no time to mess around.
So it's really only when Jesus is speaking that it goes all the way through.
It picks up a little bit. I mean, it still trudges, but it does pick up a little bit in that spot. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, for the most part. And that riff, the deedly 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 dee, it always has struck me as sounding. I'm trying to say it. I don't want to say something mean.
Since when? Why?
There's something about it that once you hear it a couple times, you know what it sounds like. And I think it's because it's played so often, like it's inserted into almost every line in the song.
It's repetitive. Yeah.
You're like, yeah, diddly 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 dee.
Yeah.
Which again kind of makes sense with the storytelling of the song. Jesus comes in and says the same thing that we've been hearing for 2,000 years.
Yeah, the repetition. There is a lot of repetition in religion, in ceremony, in all of that, you know. So, I mean, I suppose that you could look at that as the backbone of this song and therefore the backbone of all of Christianity, maybe.
He set that bandstand jumping, and also with you.
Oh, almost aspirated kombucha.
That's my
And
goal.
also with you. Ugh. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I would maybe consider going back to Christianity if it were no, because there are like rock and roll churches, right?
Oh,
like
they are the worst.
they seem that, yeah.
Oh. Ooh.
Why? Why would you just disingenuous?
I'll tell you why. Because one of the only reasons, in my opinion, to go to church is because some churches have pretty banging music. If you go to a Catholic church, the Catholic Church has been the creator or the funder of some really dope music through the ages, and I'm there for it. The Baptists will sing their ever-loving tits off, and it sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
Even the Episcopalians, you know, all those old-timey, I went to the garden alone, gorgeous, beautiful music, even in Protestantism. When it comes to the evangelicals, they seem to have left their good taste behind the door. I don't know what happened, but if you've ever heard any of their music, it is so bland. It is so rhythmless. It has
It's cookie cutter.
It has zero interest to it. I wouldn't ever get upset about it, but
Except for right now.
but it just every time I've heard it, it is not just the worst religious music that I've ever heard. It is the worst music that I've ever heard.
That's a good assessment. Yeah.
It's like 2 chords. There are like 6 guitars on stage. I don't know, man. I really hate it.
I guess so. Have you ever been to an evangelical church?
Oh yeah, sure.
You have?
Yeah.
Just for giggles?
Oh no, I went when I was in middle school because my friend Matt Halsey, his family, his mother was religious, and so if I stayed over on a Saturday night, the rule was I had to go with them to church Sunday morning.
Are they evangelicals?
They went to an evangelical church.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
I mean, it was really the mother who was religious.
Yeah.
And then some years ago, Katie and I had gone. I was down here visiting her on Easter, and she was like, "I'd love to go to a church service for Easter." And her friend was like, "I've heard about this church," and it was a Baptist church. And so we were like, "Ooh, maybe it's going to be cool." In my head, I was like, "They're going to sing," but it was a white Baptist church. And it was really a evangelical Baptist church. And it was just like, God is my friend. He is my friend. He can be your friend.
Sounds like Weezer.
Weezer wishes. No, they wish they're kind of going for that like sad, edgy white boy vibe, but oh my god,
Yeah.
I can't stand it.
Gross.
Anytime I see a guitar in a church, I'm like, run away.
Electric guitar.
Any kind of guitar.
Really? Not even an acoustic?
It depends how it's being played. For instance, pretty much it's a bad sign. Katie and I went to the Florida State Fair last weekend.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
One of my favorite parts of it was there was a historical reenactment town called, I swear to God, I can't make this up, Crackerville.
Who okayed that? Who signed off on that thing? Are you kidding me?
No, I don't know. But they had a church and they had
Oh my God.
they had like an old timey band, like not quite, like there's bluegrass and then there's old timey.
Yeah.
Old time. It's that old
Jug bandy?
kind of in that era, but it's like there's a specific style of music which is typically religious music,
Okay.
but it involves mandolins and a stand-up bass and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And they were playing, and they were not the best band in the world, but oh my God, I could have stayed listening to them all day. It's just those beautiful harmonies, nice rhythms, good tunes,
Yeah.
interesting lyrics. Anyway,
Wow. It's 10 minutes, everybody.
stepped on a wasp's nest of that.
Come on back. Omen, here we are.
Oh, here we are.
Halfway through. We are on our second to last track of the album. We have yet to talk reviews. Now, we know generally how people feel about this album. For the most part, people thought it was a stinker. We got a lot of love for it in Discord and on the social medias.
And in our hearts.
And in our hearts, you and I have a lot of love for it. But what did they feel in the moment contemporaneously?
The Royals of Contempt viewed it thusly.
Contempt. Yeah, that sounds right, actually.
I have from Entertainment Weekly, article published October 4th, 1991.
Wow, Entertainment Weekly. They deigned to look at Tull.
Catfish Rising, short review by Bill Wyman, my new worst enemy. He says, "Those perennials keep putting forth their homely little blooms."
First of all, it's been 2 years since there was a Tull album. Not they're biannual now. Thank you.
Right.
Carry on.
It gets better. Ian Anderson has been the cartoon-voiced, flute-playing leader of Jethro Tull for 24 years. Even more amazing is the fact that through Fat Times, parentheses, the group sold about a zillion records in the 70s, end parentheses, and Thin, most of the years since. Jethro Tull has never put out an album anyone but die-hard fans of the band's faux Elizabethan art rock would find listenable. It's tradition the band is hardly in a position to break at this late date. Classic radio fodder This Is Not Love and Doctor to My Disease leads off each side of Catfish Rising. The rest is tuneless self-indulgence. A lot to break down here. I just want to say that the level of disdain in this review is actually coming off of the page when I'm reading it. I don't understand how in the same sentence he says the group sold about a zillion records in the 70s and they've never put out an album that anyone but diehard fans would find listenable.
No, since then. Since then, they haven't put out an album. Since the 70s. Right?
No, he says even more amazing is the fact that through Fat Times and Thin, Jethro Tull has never put out an album anyone but diehard fans of the band's faux Elizabethan art rock would find listenable.
Huh. Yeah, I think he's missing a couple words in there.
I think he's missing a couple of synapses.
Brain cells, yeah.
So he's essentially saying, I've always hated Jethro Tull, and I still do.
Sticking with tradition.
Sticking with tradition, I will continue not to like this. So he basically has relegated them to a has-been status.
Why wouldn't you find someone who likes the band or even gives them a chance to review it, as opposed to somebody who clearly has disdain for them since the 70s.
It must have been fashionable at this point to
Shit on people?
Well, that's the other thing. It does feel very 1990s. They sold about a zillion albums. That's not that's not a real number.
It's a ballpark.
Okay, cool kid Bill Wyman.
With your baggy jeans.
Yeah, why don't you go play with Goofy and Max?
Goofy and Max? Is that Goof Troop?
Yeah. Yeah.
It is 90s. Yeah, go play with your hacky sack, Bill.
Yeah. But I wonder if even the idea that a rock band could be around for 24, 25 years made them unfashionable.
I think it's very similar to what Folky Phil was talking about last week, in that they changed because Ian wanted to change. Ian was constantly changing. There's no constant in the universe but change.
There's no constant in the universe but Ian Anderson.
But Ian Anderson, parentheses, changing.
Changing.
And clearly Bill was not mature enough for it, was not able to go back and enjoy it for what it was. I mean, he clearly didn't enjoy the early stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so that's that review.
Oh, that's it? That's all that was?
That's the entire thing.
Wow, what a shitty review.
If we go over to the Prague Archives, praguearchives.com.
I think we've visited them before.
And the interesting thing about this is that anyone can rate an album, and then what it does is it aggregates those ratings.
So it's like Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah. The average rating is 2.64 out of 5.
Okay, half.
43% of it rate it as a 3-star album, meaning good but not essential. Only 6% rate it as a masterpiece.
Yeah, I don't think I would call it a masterpiece. I'm assuming that's a 5.
Yeah.
I'd give it a 4.5, a 4.
What's really interesting is that a lot of people say that it's less good. There's kind of this idea that Crest of a Knave and Rock Island and Catfish form a trio.
Yes. I'm partial to that idea. Yeah.
I don't necessarily subscribe to that, but I'm willing to leave space for those who do.
Thank you. It's comfortable here.
Yeah. And a lot of people are saying that it is the weakest of that trilogy, which I disagree with.
What is it again? Catfish, Rock Island, and
Crest.
Crest?
Yeah.
I don't think there is a weak album among them.
I would say if you had to pick.
I don't think you necessarily have to pick, there doesn't have to be a bad one. But you would say Rock Island?
I would say Rock Island, but also my opinion doesn't matter.
I've been telling you that for years.
I'm listening. And neither do any of these people's opinions.
Yeah.
I see a number of comments saying that it is the American album.
Mm-hmm. We've been saying that this whole time.
Yeah.
Not in a derogatory way. Or pejorative, I would say.
I think the main complaint is that to these writers, it doesn't sound like Tull. And I think that's what we've talked about, is that it doesn't sound like what their expectation of Tull is. When we first popped on the Zealot Gene, or Rockflöte, it took a minute to adjust.
It took several minutes to
adjust. Many minutes. The first time I listened through Zealot Gene, I was like, "Oof, this is gonna be a tough one." But you listen to it a couple more times, and you start craving it.
Rock Flute was a lot easier to get into, I think, because it had only been a year since we'd heard new Tull, and it's rockier. It's got more of that heavier feel that we hear in these older, more recent albums. But Zealot Gene, first album in 20 years with a very different sound and different approach to the creation of the songs. Like it was a shocker. And it didn't sound like Catfish. It didn't sound like Songs from the Wood. It still sounded like Tull.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
That's the thing. That's why I get a little bit defensive, I think, of this era of albums, because I think it is so fashionable to hate on them. It's so the done thing.
So quick to shoot it down. Yeah.
And I think that, what we're trying to do is to show that there is beauty in every Tull album.
That's right. Except for fill in the blank.
Well, everyone has one. Everyone can pick one.
What's your one? Oh, no. We'll save it. We'll save it.
We'll save it for the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Zealot Gene story. I had Zealot Gene on the other day, and Rook is at a point where he will ask the name of every single song when it comes on, no matter what it is. So just like, what's the name of the song? He and I were coloring, and Zealot Gene, and the title track Zealot Gene came on, and he stopped coloring and he looked up at me and went, Zealot Gene? And I was like, yeah.
Ooh, pattern recognition.
Yes. This boy's learning. Oos. Dad's success. Omen, when Jesus came to play.
About 7:30.
Let's talk. Oh, is that when? It's past my bedtime. Sorry, I won't be able to make it. Let's talk lyrics. Is this Allegory? Is this an old hippie rock star who thinks he's the second coming and is about to melt our face, but is really underwhelming? Is this actually Jesus, but it's commentary that if Jesus were to show up, we wouldn't actually recognize him or give him the respect that the Catholics believe he deserves?
That second option has always been my read. I think this song poses that theological question. If Jesus walked into a bar and started preaching his stuff, would anyone listen?
It's my favorite joke. What's the punchline again? No. The answer is no.
The punchline is crucifixion.
Ooh.
And I do think that, what if God was one of us? Just a slob, like one of us. One of you.
Have you seen Austin Powers? You must have, right?
Sure.
Dr. Evil playing What If God Was One of Us, and then just like he forgets the lyrics, so he goes blee blah blah blee blue blee blee.
Yeah, that's good.
What if God was one of us? Just a slob like one of us. Blue, 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 blue. Yeah, blah, blee, blee, blee. Well done. Very good.
Dr. Evil, that was fantastic.
Thank you, number 2. I wrote that. Yeah.
So I think it is a commentary on that. I also think it's a commentary on the ego of rockers, the ego of rock and roll musicians. Somebody coming into the venue with all of this overblown confidence, self-promotion.
So that goes back to the first theory that I posited, that he thinks he's the second coming, that he is Jesus and deserves that respect, even though he's not. He's not changing any lives. He's not saving anybody with his subpar rock and roll.
Right.
Yeah.
And we see that all the time with musicians and celebrities. In a sense, it takes so much self-belief and self-promotion to make it as an artist.
Yeah.
That for some people, they're going to slide too far. Mm-hmm. Look at Kanye West.
Oof. Do I have to?
Look at him too closely.
Yeah, thank you.
But he's somebody who is clearly has mental health issues, sadly, and has let his narrative about himself take him too far.
Yeah. His ego has overpowered the, what is it? Ego, super ego? Is that the other one?
Super ego.
I think it's the super ego.
Yeah.
So maybe it's the super ego that took over. I don't know. I don't subscribe to Freud.
I don't subscribe to Kanye West.
I canceled my subscription.
There's also something really funny about the idea that if Jesus came back, it'd kind of be an inconvenience to our daily lives.
Yes. Yeah. And what he would be preaching would be so mundane and banal that we'd be like, I've heard this before. I'm going to find something else more entertaining.
Yeah, it is interesting. I feel like this theory of Jesus' return is a little different than like the Zealot gene. Because I feel like in the Zealot gene, we have this idea that if Jesus were actually to come back and start preaching, he'd be the most radical, like
That's true. That's
dangerous
really true.
political figure and would probably get crucified again.
Yeah.
This is a little bit more jokey of like, he's like, I'm Jesus. I'm ready to rock. Love thy brother. Oh, we know this one.
Yeah. Amazing what 30 years will do. 30 years in American politics will do.
Yeah.
Or even British politics. Yeah.
I'm here to drop some new songs. Yay!
Yay.
It's all re-releases.
Oh, this Jesus version, isn't that?
Jesus version,
Yeah.
right? And more importantly, he didn't make it fun.
Right.
You know, he cranked it up loud. He got the attention. He hyped himself up. He got the attention. He got the bandstand jumping, and he played 3 or 4 numbers. People weren't into it. There were no girls dancing on the floor.
Right.
People were so upset about it, they started turning over tables and getting in fights, and so we left.
Yeah. And there were no minor miracles, but false prophets. They were burned. So is that implying that this Jesus character is the false prophet?
Maybe.
Who's the false prophet here?
Right. It almost sounds like it's a lot of bluster, but none of the real Jesus stuff. Like, he doesn't prove himself to be Jesus. He doesn't turn water into wine. He doesn't do any other miracles. He just slanders other people,
Yeah.
puts them down.
All sound and fury signifying nothing.
Oh, very good. Yes.
Yeah, there's so much setup here, which is those first 2 verses. There's all that good setup, all that really he sets our scene. He sets kind of the idea of what Jesus is doing and getting ready to do. That's when we have all of that musical setup as well. Those nice stings, that interstitials, the feeling of the music really working in conjunction with the story that's being told here. Then we get that I've got no 12 disciples. I've got no cross to bear. If you thought they had me crucified, I guess you weren't there.
I do love that line.
It's good. It's really good. He's starting to tell his present day story. I guess, you know, I've come back,
Yeah.
but I don't have any disciples. I don't have this cross.
I'm Jesus. You're just going to have to trust me.
Yeah,
that
right.
that I am who I say. I don't do that miracle stuff anymore.
Yeah. Weren't you crucified? I mean, hearsay.
Where'd you hear that?
Who told you that?
Took a red Sharpie and drew a circle on my hand.
Yeah, I fooled him.
I do like, and the table's overturned. That makes me think it's a little bit of a reference to the money changers in the temple.
Moneylenders, yeah.
Moneylenders, because he throws them out and then he turns over he knocks the tables over.
Yeah. One of his few pissed off moments.
I love it when Jesus goes beast mode.
Oh, he gets so angry and everybody's scared.
I would be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lightning and thunder.
Well, I would be scared that he's going to mess up his robes.
Oh, you're worried about the fashion.
Always.
Always.
I do appreciate that Ian ends the song with, "Oh, Jesus, is it really you?
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus, is it really you?" Because it introduces a sense of doubt. This is a song that is so clear, unusually clear when it comes to the storytelling, the imagery, the literal this happened, then this happened.
Right.
And I feel like it goes from normal night excitement / doubt,
Yeah.
and then excitement. Oh yeah, he's getting things moving. He's playing. He's turning the speakers up loud. He's probably going to do something really cool.
Yeah.
To disappointment,
Yeah.
to anger, and then disbandonment, and then at the very end, a little bit of like, but was it? Could that have really
Was
been
that
Jesus?
actually Jesus?
If it was, how would I know?
Yeah. But it's not a matter of, it doesn't feel remorse, you know, like, oh man, we missed out. It's like the discussion that you have with your drunk buddies when you're leaving the bar to go somewhere else. You're like, was that really Jesus? Yeah, I don't know. Let's go have another Jaeger bomb.
Is it even the
I remember when I was a little girl, our house caught on fire. I'll never forget the look on my father's face as he gathered me up in his arms and raced to the burning building onto the pavement. And I stood there, shivering in my pajamas, and watched the whole world go up in flames. And when it was all over, I said to myself, is that all there is to a fire?
I wonder if there's that sense of like, is that all there is to Jesus? It's just some guy who comes in and yells at the microphone. Damn.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that idea, that sense of being underwhelmed, sense of being like, well, this is lame, and then leaving. And then even after the fact being like, well, even if we had stayed, like, what would we have gotten out of this if that was Jesus?
We waited 2,000 years. We had crusades about that? That is a disappointment. That is a big theological disappointment.
Yeah. I think that was touched on in the Zealot gene, is that if Jesus were to come back, he'd have to be big and bombastic and radical.
You'd have to have a TikTok account.
Yeah, and spout hatred, not love.
For anyone to listen to him.
He'd have to be an Old Testament Jesus, not a New Testament Jesus. Yeah.
Oh, Testament Jesus.
I like that. It's a good cover.
Thanks.
That's a good Weird Al cover.
Yeah. What I like about this song is that the storytelling is really good. I'm less up on the musicality of this song, but I do love the storytelling, and I do love the kind of theological conundrum that it posits. It's a fun thing to think about.
Yeah. Yeah, I never thought about it like that until now, and I do really, really enjoy it when thinking 30 years into the future with the presentation that is the Zealot gene.
Yes.
Those two paired together makes a really strong thought experiment.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's neat.
Well, what are we listening to next week, Nick?
Our final track off of Catfish, we are going to cover Night in the Wilderness.
Very exciting. It is also worth noting that along with that 2006 remaster release, there was also a live version of Jumpstart that was released. But since we've already covered that, we're not going to touch on that track. But if you want to go and listen to it, go ahead.
Go for it. Yeah, we don't cover the lives unless there is no other version of it. So if you want that, go back and listen to Reynard and John Barleycorn from, probably about a year ago at this point. I don't even know anymore. It's all a blur.
Time is an ocean.
It's an ocean that Reynard the Fox floats on. Until next week, my name is Nick McGill. I'm going to turn your head around.
My hair could use a comb. I'm Omen Thomas Sade.
We're the ugly friends in the watering hole, the feckless momes.
And there are no girls moving in Talk Tull to Me.
Is that all there is? Is that all there is? If that's all there is, my friends, then let's keep dancing. Let's break out the booze and have a ball. If that's all